Have you ever taken a sip of Coca-Cola and thought about where it came from? Not just the factory, but the idea, the formula, the vision? What if I told you it all started with a wounded soldier, a failed medicinal syrup, and a businessman who turned a simple drink into one of the most powerful symbols of modern capitalism? Coca-Cola is more than just a soda. It's a story of invention, ambition, war, marketing, failure, and global domination. In this video, we're going to explore how Coca-Cola was built, from the pharmacy shelves of 19th century Atlanta to the fridges of over 200 countries. You'll see how branding created an empire, how wars spread the drink to every continent, and how even colossal mistakes like New Coke couldn't stop its rise. This is not just the history of a company, it's the story of how an idea can transform the world, one bottle at a time. Welcome to How It Was Built. Let's begin. Atlanta, Georgia, 1886. The American Civil War had ended 2 decades earlier, but its scars remained. Among its survivors, a man named John Stith Pemberton, a former Confederate officer and a pharmacist. Badly injured during the war, he lived with chronic pain and became addicted to morphine in his search for a cure to his own suffering. Pemberton turned to chemistry. That's when he created a strange syrup, combining coca leaves, yes, the plant used to make cocaine, and cola nuts, rich in caffeine. He called it Pemberton's French wine coca, a kind of nerve tonic, a cure for headaches, exhaustion, even impotence. But times were changing. In 1886, Atlanta banned the sale of alcohol, so Pemberton had to reformulate the drink, removing the wine and adding sugar and carbonated water. That's when the world's most famous drink was born. Though it wasn't called Coca-Cola just yet. The name came from someone else, Frank Robinson, Pemberton's bookkeeper. He suggested Coca-Cola for its 2 main ingredients, and designed the now iconic logo in his own handwriting. At first, the drink was sold in pharmacies by the glass as medicine. It cost 5 cents, and it didn't take long for competitors to show up. Everyone wanted to replicate this new fizzy elixir, but Pemberton wouldn't live to see what his invention would become. Just 2 years after Coca-Cola's debut, he died, poor, sick, and addicted. In a tragic twist, he had sold the rights to Coca-Cola shortly before his death for just a few $100s, and that's when the real story begins. The year is 1888. Coca-Cola has a name, a logo, and a recipe, but it has no direction, no strategy, no future. Enter Asa Candler, a drugstore owner from Atlanta with one thing in mind: expansion. Candler was no inventor. He didn't create Coca-Cola, but he saw what others didn't: the power of a brand. He bought the formula and rights from Pemberton's widow and business partners, not all at once, but piece by piece. By 1891, for about $2,300, he owned Coca-Cola entirely. It was Candler who transformed a tonic into a product. He began producing the syrup on a larger scale and started one of the first major marketing campaigns in American history. He gave away free drink coupons, distributed clocks, calendars, and trays with the Coca-Cola logo. He painted walls in towns across the South. His goal was simple: make Coca-Cola a household name and make it addictive in every sense. And it worked. By 1895, Coca-Cola was being sold in every US state, but something was missing. At that time, people still drank Coca-Cola at soda fountains. They couldn't take it home. There were no bottles. That's when in 1899, 2 lawyers approached Candler with a bold idea: bottle Coca-Cola, mass produce it, sell it everywhere. Candler was skeptical, but he agreed for just $1. That decision changed everything. Soon, bottling plants were opening across the country, and imitation drinks began flooding the market, all trying to copy the taste and the name. That led to another milestone: the contour bottle. In 1915, Coca-Cola held a design competition. The winning entry was inspired by the shape of a cocoa bean. Even though cocoa isn't an ingredient, but the design was perfect, elegant, unique, impossible to confuse. It became one of the most iconic packaging designs of all time. By the time Asa Candler stepped away from the company in 1919, Coca-Cola was no longer a drink. It was an American institution, and it was only just getting started. As the world plunged into war, Coca-Cola saw something others didn't: an opportunity not just to survive, but to expand. During World War II, Coca-Cola became more than a soft drink. It became a symbol of home, of America, of freedom. In 1941, as US troops were deployed around the globe, Coca-Cola's president at the time, Robert Woodruff, made a bold promise: every man in uniform will get a bottle of Coca-Cola for 5 cents, wherever he is, and whatever it costs the company. Coca-Cola built bottling plants on the front lines, literally: North Africa, Europe, the Pacific. Wherever there were American soldiers, there was Coca-Cola. The brand was no longer just American. It became part of the American mission, a tool of soft power. To many in war-torn nations, that first sip of Coke wasn't just a refreshment. It was a taste of the United States. And after the war, those plants stayed. Coca-Cola had unintentionally created a global distribution network, paid for by war and sustained by demand. In Japan, in Germany, and France, people didn't just adopt Coca-Cola, they embraced it. By the 1950s, the company was a cultural juggernaut. Coca-Cola wasn't just selling soda, it was exporting an idea, the American lifestyle. The result? A business strategy deeply rooted in geopolitics. The war had changed Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola in turn helped shape the post-war world. But while Coca-Cola was planting flags, a new threat was rising, not on the battlefield but in the market. Every empire needs a rival, and for Coca-Cola, that rival was Pepsi. Founded in 1893, Pepsi spent decades living in Coca-Cola's shadow. They had similar formulas, similar names, but very different fates. While Coca-Cola focused on tradition, prestige, and patriotism, Pepsi decided to break the rules. In the 1930s, while the US suffered through the Great Depression, Pepsi hit the market with a bold campaign. Twice as much for a nickel, same price, bigger bottle. It was simple, aggressive, and it worked. Pepsi gained ground. But it wasn't until the 1980s that the rivalry exploded. In a move that would change advertising forever, Pepsi launched the Pepsi Challenge, a blind taste test where real people consistently chose Pepsi over Coke. The results were shocking. Even die-hard Coke drinkers couldn't tell the difference, and many preferred the sweeter taste of Pepsi. Coca-Cola panicked. In 1985, they made a decision that would become one of the biggest marketing disasters of all time. They changed the formula. They called it New Coke. The backlash was immediate. Protests, letters, angry phone calls. People weren't just mad, they were heartbroken. Coca-Cola had underestimated something powerful: emotional attachment. It wasn't just about the flavor. Coca-Cola was nostalgia, identity, memory. Just 79 days later, the company brought back the original recipe. They called it Coca-Cola Classic, and oddly enough, that failure only made the brand stronger. It reminded the world just how much Coca-Cola meant. While Pepsi won the taste test, Coca-Cola won the emotional war, and sometimes in business, that's the one that matters. By the mid-20th century, Coca-Cola wasn't just a drink, it was everywhere. On billboards, in lunchboxes, on TV screens, in space. The brand had become part of everyday life, and Coca-Cola knew how to stay there. Let's talk about one of the greatest marketing moves of all time. The year was 1931. Coca-Cola hired artist Haden Sundblom to create an image of Santa Claus for their Christmas ads. Until then, Santa had no fixed look, sometimes tall, sometimes thin, but Sundblom's version, a jolly chubby man in a red and white suit, the same colors as Coca-Cola, that image stuck. It became the Santa Claus we all know today, and this was just the beginning. Coca-Cola associated itself with everything happy, American, and global, from Olympic Games to Super Bowl commercials, from polar bears in snow to share a Coke with e-bottles. It also partnered with global pop icons, Michael Jackson, Selena, Taylor Swift. The Coca-Cola name appeared in music videos, Hollywood films, and even on the moon, thanks to NASA missions where Coke cans were tested in zero gravity. What Coca-Cola understood better than anyone was this: you don't sell soda, you sell emotion, a feeling, a moment, and that's exactly what their marketing did. Even their slogans told a story. It's the real thing. Open happiness. Taste the feeling. Simple, powerful, global. Coca-Cola wasn't just writing culture, it was creating it, one campaign at a time. But not everything about the brand story is joyful. Some chapters are darker. Behind every empire, there are shadows, and Coca-Cola is no exception. While the brand projected happiness, unity, and refreshment, its global expansion came with accusations, controversies, and boycotts. Let's start with the ingredients. For decades, Coca-Cola contained cocaine extracts, not enough to cause intoxication, but still part of its allure. It wasn't until 1929 that the company fully removed all traces of the substance. Then came the health concerns. High levels of sugar, caffeine, and acidity turned Coca-Cola into a symbol of unhealthy diets, especially for children. Nutritionists around the world pointed to soda consumption as a contributor to obesity, diabetes, and dental decay. In response, Coca-Cola launched alternatives: Diet Coke, Coke Zero, Coca-Cola Life. But critics argue it was more about optics than change, and the controversies didn't stop there. In Colombia, Coca-Cola faced allegations of union suppression and links to violence in its bottling plants. In India, the company was accused of over-extracting groundwater in rural areas, leaving communities dry. Human rights organizations and environmental groups launched campaigns and boycotts. The company denied direct responsibility, but the damage to its image was real. Even today, Coca-Cola spends millions on lobbying against soda taxes and public health campaigns. Its influence in politics is as strong as its presence in supermarkets. No brand gets this big without criticism, and Coca-Cola's story is not just about success, but about the tensions between growth, responsibility, and perception. Still, despite all that, the company continues to evolve.